I am a 23-year-old woman, the third child in a family of 4. My younger brother and I are childless by 1 year since we're not really fond of children and find them to be easily irritable. 5 of my sister's children are girls and 3 are boys. They're fine, but I can't stand how much they scream and cry all the time. I have repeatedly stated that I'm not good with children and that I don't really want to look after any because I get annoyed by them fast, but I'm just ignored. They're also highly spoilt and dislike the word no. My sister discovered a trend on TikTok where parents drop their children down outside a family member's house, knock on the door, and then drive away, only picking up their kids when the door opens. I don't think it's hilarious, but she does. It seems risky to me in addition to being insensitive. I warned my sister not to since I wouldn't answer the door even if I were inside. She laughed at me and suggested, "Maybe I'll do this on you." She said that I would have to take care of the kids as she would just leave them there. I threatened to call the cops on her and said that I would not open the door. She dismissed it with a simple laugh. He was going to spend his weekend off from work lounging about my flat, where I had converted my second bedroom into an art studio and was going to work on some pieces of art and my novel. On Saturday morning, I got up very early and relished the calm until I heard someone knock on my door. In case something untoward occurs, I have a camera facing my entrance and have an app on my phone for it. I looked and it was my sister's children. I was furious because I knew she was attempting to follow that ridiculous TikTok craze, but I stuck to my word and didn't answer the door. There were more knocks. My sister tried to phone, and when I didn't pick up, she texted me repeatedly to get the door opened. I told her I wouldn't watch the kids, and she knew I wanted a weekend to myself, so I texted her to grab the kids and head out. She didn't stop contacting me to let me in. She texted me to let me know that she was going and asked me to come watch them for 20 minutes. I have no idea why she waited that long. I texted her back, saying I would contact the police if she didn't return straight away. I called the cops after not hearing back from her. 2 policemen arrived at my residence, and 2 more found my sister and forced her to drive to my address. She cried aloud as she stomped out of her car, calling me a terrible sister and explaining why it's a given that I'm unmarried and would die alone. At last, she manages to get her kids back into her car and leaves, with the cops trailing after, and I resume my weekend off. After my sister yelled at our family for what I had done, there have been conflicting comments online. Some claim that I had a right to go off alone, while others argue that as a mother, she should occasionally take a vacation. Maria's house at this time. Not today, for the top remarks, huh? Oddly enough, I have no problem with this. The nuclear option was to call the police, but you just said what you would do. It's possible that your sister needs some time off, however there are issues with that. It's known as picking up and dropping off a sitter. She could not even be aware that you weren't at home. Completely careless. You're right, she would keep doing this even if you gave in. If the mother simply up and leaves the kids, that's a reasonable thing to do to make sure they're safe, therefore I wouldn't say it's a nuclear option in this situation. I concur that the children's safety is crucial, as invoking the police on a family member might have long-term consequences. In addition, she now has documentation in case there are any more incidents. She should set a record for abandoning her children outside of a person's house after being informed that she wouldn't be staying with them. She is careless for leaving them there because they are her children and she is responsible for them. A record ought to exist, and she is deserving of what she received. Naughty home. Her inquiry is about giving her kids to someone who doesn't want to watch them. It's not about her needing a break. This is something I've heard about, and in addition to being really impolite, it may even be harmful if the parents leave before the door is opened. Anyhow, you promised your sister that you wouldn't watch them and that, should she leave, you would phone the police. After she went, you phoned the police instead of watching over them. I think it's quite obvious that she is the jerk in this. Who entrusts their kids to someone who has made it apparent they detest kids and don't want to raise them. She really ought to take a close look at herself. Her actions are not acceptable. You're not really at home. Next story, Emmett Hall gave her unpaid pay for never agreeing to babysit. At age 21, I am the youngest of 4 children. I'm not childless, rather, I don't have any. My spouse and I wish to wait about 4 more years to have kids. I have 12 nephews and nieces. Each of my siblings has a large family. My siblings have all never married, are divorced, or are single. I've turned down their requests to babysit on several occasions. None of them are adept at disciplining their children. Their children will bite one another, steal, and lie. It's difficult to be around them even. The other 2 want me to watch them for free, but my older brother has offered to pay me. I turned down all 3. I've told my family that if I wanted to watch kids, I'd have some, because they all think I'm a jerk for never babysitting. The other day, my sister wanted to go on a date, but nobody was willing to mind her 6 children. She stated she'll never find a nice man to settle down with if she can't go out, and I told her, too bad. She's delusional, I said. I have nothing to do with it. Am I a haul for never having watched kids before? Edit, I promise not to ask any of my kids to babysit when I do have kids. I'd rather spend money on a pro. The other day, my sister wanted to go on a date, but nobody was willing to mind her 6 children. She stated she'll never find a nice man to settle down with if she can't go out, and I told her, too bad. Here, I believe I see her issue. She won't find a wonderful man who wants to settle down with her and her 6 kids, even if you were to babysit for her every night for the next year. Not now, at home. Yes, she is a complete disaster. My least preferred sibling. I'm curious, how many fathers are there between those children? Their fathers are not the same. Every time you refrain from aiding your sister in having children, you're doing those kids a favor. They already have very little chance in life. Given that these kids are probably living in filth, have you given any thought to adopting any of them? I'm thinking of adopting my sister's oldest child. He's 14, almost 15, and he has to care his younger siblings, who range in age from 1 to 9, all the time. To be honest though, my sister would never let me use her free babysitting. Not the hoe. They all seem to need to invest in a decent housekeeper, nanny, or babysitter. I have experience caring for children in a variety of settings, but there isn't enough money in the world for me to watch 6 children by myself. They all grumble, though, because none of them can afford creche given how many children they have. Although I'm sorry, I also think they made a decision. Yes, they ought to give up having children if they are unable to support them or to care for them. It's not your fault, hee. Am I a haul for not wanting to invite my 9-year-old nephew to my wedding, is the subject of the next tale. My fiancé and I had a conversation and decided that we did not want my nephew to attend our wedding, which is taking place in 2 months. My nephew's lack of self-control is the reason why. He is noisy, inattentive, and unable to remain motionless for even a minute. My clothing was even destroyed by my nephew. As a fashion designer, I created my own bridal gown. My sister also asked my nephew and niece to visit one day. I invited them both inside, but I warned them not to enter my office since I was working on something, my dress, there. While my niece was playing with my daughter and I was in the kitchen getting them some snacks, my nephew goes in there and purposely tears my dress with my fabric scissors. I left my scissors out in the open in a room he wasn't even meant to be in, but my sister didn't even make him apologize. My nephew's behavior has resulted in his exclusion from numerous activities on multiple occasions. My nephew even has repeated suspensions from school, and my sister finds it difficult to get babysitters for him. She still hasn't taken any action in response to his actions. My sister freaked out and said she wouldn't be going if her son wasn't permitted to go when I told her. It inquired as to if I was also prohibiting our brother's son. She complained to our mother and posted on Facebook, saying things like, "I detest my nephew and I'm not inviting him to my wedding over a dress." In agreement with my sister, my mother claims that it is unjust for me to invite my niece but not my nephew and that I would cause my nephew to feel as though there is a problem with him. My brother concurs and believes it will force my sister to consider taking concrete action regarding her son's behavior instead of continuing to act as though nothing was wrong. I don't want this behavior to jeopardize the day I worked so hard to organize because I know how my nephew is. Here, am I the a-hole? The top remarks are as follows. Not today, yo. I believe you ought to accept your sister's invitation to skip the event. Alright, many thanks. Goodbye. Not the house. And I would reply to her social media posts, elaborating on his age, his conduct, and her total lack of discipline and control over the youngster. No, I wouldn't. This kind of hate is usually seen through and comes out as juvenile. I would say nothing at all and let the sister run wild. If someone asks, politely and regretfully explain the circumstances. Not remain at home. It's appropriate to have her boycott in protest since your sister covered for your nephew, who is far too old to inadvertently cut things that belong to other people. She has the option of raising a well-behaved child or not. However, you should only get married once, so you don't need drama or a wild child to ruin it. To find out his age, I had to look back to the title. His age of 9 was surprising. That's something I could see a 3 to 5-year-old doing, but 9 should be mature enough to know better. He was behaving out and knew what he was doing. Not remain at home. The last anecdote is a Marie Hall for refusing to stop seeing my daughter over her sister. As a 56-year-old woman who has always admired 59-year-old men, I have been a fan of Kurt's. My 2 daughters are June, 30, and Ruth, 32. Ruth broke up with her 32-year-old college lover, Adam, 8 years ago. They had dated since she was 21 or 21, and their relationship was as committed as a college romance could go. June revealed that she had reconnected with Adam at an alumni gathering around 5 years prior. They all attended the same university and are currently in a romantic relationship. She argued that they were in love and that she couldn't stop it, even though Kurt and I were stunned that she would do this in light of her sister's past relationship with him. Furthermore, Ruth hasn't done anything wrong because she and Adam hadn't been together in a long time. It made sense that Ruth was furious about it. She declared she would never see June again and that she was done with her. I was devastated by this. Growing up, they were quite close, and I hoped every day that they would make up. However, I acknowledge that they are adults with free will and that our opinion is irrelevant. June had also let Kurt and me down, and we had reprimanded her numerous times. However, after she demonstrated that there had never been any adultery throughout Ruth and Adam's relationship, things between us improved. We never got the girls together again, out of consideration for Ruth's feelings. Even after 5 years, Ruth and June still don't get along and visit us separately, but we have kept our relationships with them. June and Adam are now hitched. Ruth went on and found a nice boy. By coincidence, this is the first child that both girls are expecting. Ruth is due on the earlier side. I just cannot express how happy we are to have both of these kids as grandparents. I've offered my support and participated as much as our daughters have requested during their pregnancies. But Ruth drops a bomb on us last week. She declared that she would not let us into her child's life if we ever saw June or her child again. I was aware that she was concerned by the fact that we were still friendly with her sister, but this broke my heart. It has kept me up all night. It hurts to think that any of my grandchildren might grow up without loving grandparents. Although I am aware that June's actions caused great pain to Ruth, I'm not sure if we should face consequences for just not cutting off our child. She refuses to change her mind, even if we implored her to. It looks like we will lose a daughter and grandson no matter what we decide, which is why I don't want to accept Ruth's requirements. We explicitly chose not to have that happen, thus I'd prefer it not to. Again, the prospect crushes me, but I also don't want Ruth to think we just dump her in favor of June. Should I follow Ruth's orders or would I be the bad guy? Edited to add, I want to thank everyone for their sympathies over the circumstances. It feels like nothing will ever make me feel better, even though I wish I could claim it has. I'm unable to address every comment, so I'll just address a few of the most frequently asked ones here. Why did Adam and Ruth part ways? Ruth left Adam because she found him to be immature, depressed, and prone to small irritations that added up over time. She said that she had never heard of any mistreatment or infidelity. Did we ever lend Ruth any support? When it first happened, Ruth initially resided with us for a few months. Not only that, but there were other reasons as well, and throughout it all, we supported and consoled her. We had requested June not to come back till she had left because she was so furious, but we continued to speak with her and had a few meetings in public. We expressed our disappointment that she hadn't considered this and let her know how this had affected her sister. June supported Ruth and acknowledged our point of view. She said she was sorry about her sister's passing, but we made it quite evident that Ruth had chosen to break things off. Whether or not one believes June did nothing wrong, the statement that there were never any repercussions for this is incorrect. Even now, she still finds it difficult to deal with the loss of her sister, but she has come to terms with it. Has June ever offered Ruth an apology? June apologized, according to both girls, and she did so a few times throughout the years. Nobody challenged her. Ruth is perfectly within her rights to not forgive her. We acknowledge that nobody can force her to accept the apology. How about we just cut Adam off? He is the father of our second grandson and June's spouse. They are now a package deal. Cut him off, and we run the same chance of losing June and our grandchild, which is precisely what I'm attempting to avoid. Some have stated that because I didn't break up with June right away, I already selected her and that I'm a heartbreaker for having accepted her after this. I find it incomprehensible that someone would advise me to act as though she was never our child and to permanently disown her over this. That doesn't imply I picked June over Ruth as my mother. Ruth remarked that as long as she never had to see June, she was perfectly happy with the arrangement we'd had for the previous 5 years. She seemed pleased to see us, and our interactions were typical. She's only now asking us to make a decision. Some have suggested that because we're toxic and terrible, she should have cut us off from the beginning. She has often expressed her want to keep talking to us. She wants us to choose her over June because she loves us and wants us to be involved with her child, but June doesn't deserve the same love and attention from us. In addition, we would not have maintained communication, or at least not had any contact, with Adam and Ruth if he had ever mistreated or cheated on her. However, that is not the case. Furthermore, both girls would constantly assure us that their relationship had nothing to do with us. Not now, at home. Using the infant as leverage, she is merely attempting one last push for dominance. Ruth's situation is terrible, but she shouldn't be venting her emotions on you too. You seem like devoted parents. Express your disapproval of the ultimatum to her and offer to leave the door open in case she decides to reconsider. It's strange that she hasn't moved on from the relationship even after 5 years, especially considering how long it lasted between them both and the fact that they are now married. That just seems strange to me. Perhaps I'm being naive, having never been in a situation like that. If Ruth has a partner, I wonder what they think of it. She is not required to associate with someone who would betray her or other people's perceptions of the circumstance just because she is over the axe. Not remain at home. Inform Ruth that she has made the decision to leave your life and that you would never abandon any of your children. Remind her that your door is always open and, despite your pain, keep sending your grandchild birthday and Christmas cards. She'll probably come around, but in the event that she doesn't, you'll know that you respected her boundaries and maintained open lines of communication. I know I sound crazy, but the thought of this is what nearly tears my heart the most. I know a couple people who do this because they've been refused access to their grandchildren. It really bothers me to give presents, cards, cash, pictures, and other items that might wind up in a dusty box in an attic somewhere and be hidden from our grandchild. They are unaware of our love and longing for them. I would wonder whether Ruth would just toss everything away, leaving no trace of our correspondence or lack of concern. We would have to comply if she requested that we stop mailing them. Even if we are able to offer June's child a lot of affection, I can't help but remember that we don't do the same for Ruth's. You.